Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some more breaking news for this Michigan program as defensive line coach Gregg Scruggs resigning, heading into 2024. And I want to reopen the conversation with defensive line coach candidates for this Michigan program. And I want to kick us back to kind of where we started this conversation the first time Michigan was trying to fill this position, and that is this has to be the most attractive defensive line coach position across all of college football. If you're a defensive line coach, you want to have the opportunity to work with guys like Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Derek Moore, Josiah Stewart. In my mind, the most talented defensive line we see in the country heading into 2024. And we just saw Sherrone Moore go out to Ohio State and grab their running backs coach in Tony Alford. There is no doubt in my mind, Sherrone Moore going to make a very big hire for this defensive line coach opening. Want to offer some names that I think would be really interesting gets for this Michigan program before we get into it. And as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the Michigan fans. Y'all know Michigan is my team. There's not a program across the country I love talking about more than my Michigan Wolverines. Cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas, whether we're talking coaching hires, whether we're talking the recruiting trail. The support from the Michigan fans truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, would love to hear some names from you guys in the comment section. This news happened within the last hour, so I'm kind of scrambling, putting some names together, some names that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Want to get into them, but again, would love to hear some names that you guys have in the comment section. Now, the first name that I think is probably a real, I think was about to be, or at least Michigan was reaching out to him from what we've heard, is defensive line coach Terence Jameson. And this was a guy that I think was on Michigan's board the first time they were trying to hire this defensive line coach position. And I mean, the proof's in the pudding for Terence Jameson. You talk about elite player development. You look at what Illinois has done on the defensive line the last couple of years. Guys like Johnny Newton, guys like Keith Randolph, specifically on the inside. Illinois has been one of the best defenses, not only getting after the passer, but also stopping the run the last couple of years. And we want to continue. What you look back to what Michigan did so well, it was stopping the run on first and second down, pinning the ears back, and getting after the passer on third and long. And that's exactly what Illinois has done the last couple of years on the defensive side of the football. And I don't know if there's a better name than Terence Jameson to go out and get. You take a look at Terence Jameson's track record. I mean, has spent the last 3 years at Illinois, has also spent time at Purdue, at Wisconsin, at Texas Tech, at FAU. I think he has a lot of connections across the country. Terence Jameson, with not even close to the talent level that Michigan has, produced phenomenal defensive linemen. I wonder what Terence Jameson can do with all the talent that Michigan has on that defensive line. I think this would be a no-brainer hire, and I think would be probably one of the names on a short list for Sherrone Moore for this next defensive line coach. Next guy I want to talk about, and a guy that I sneakily just been a huge fan of, and as Michigan fans, we go head-to-head with Kentucky on the recruiting trail very often. Amar Stewart has done a phenomenal job at Kentucky the last couple of years with that defensive line. Not only does Kentucky consistently have one of the better defenses in the country, the player development on the defensive line for the Kentucky Wildcats has been phenomenal almost every single year. And I mean, we've had success going to Kentucky to hire position coaches. They got a damn good coaching staff. You talk about a team that punches above their weight in terms of player development year after year. That's exactly what the Kentucky Wildcats have done. You look at Amar Stewart, obviously winning that recruiting battle for Deion Walker. If there's any interior defensive lineman that I think is even close to Mason Graham heading into 2024, it's probably going to be Deion Walker. I think Amar Stewart has done a phenomenal job. It's not just Deion Walker, right? You look through the past couple of years, Josh Paschal, a second-round draft pick. You look at J.J. Weaver, one of the better edge rushers that we saw in the SEC. Kentucky, kind of similar to Illinois. It's not necessarily the flashiest program, but I mean, these defensive line coaches have done phenomenal work developing guys up front. I think would be really good fits for this Michigan program. Next guy I want to go to, and not positive how realistic this one is, and Deion Barnes, who is a Penn State alum, has played in the NFL, is obviously the defensive line coach for them right now, but I mean, we go back to what Michigan just did less than a week ago and going out and getting Tony Alford from Ohio State. I don't think there's a name that's off the board for this Michigan program, and Deion Barnes has done a phenomenal job at Penn State the last couple of years. This was his first year as the full-time defensive line coach. You take a look at what they did. By far, one of the best pass rushers that we saw, not only in the Big Ten, but in the country. Many of the Michigan fans remember what Penn State was doing to us up front with that pass rush. Deion Barnes been working with guys like Chop Robinson, who I think is going to be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft. A guy like Adisa Isaac, another NFL draft pick. Danny Dennis Sutton. This Penn State defensive line were game wreckers for Penn State over the last couple of years since Deion Barnes has been there. And I think what's also really appealing about Deion Barnes is he's also a very good recruiter as well. And that's kind of the two boxes that we're largely looking to check with our position coach hires, right? Can you develop talent? And then can you get the talent to come to the program? And I think Deion Barnes, a young, energetic coach on the defensive line, I think certainly checks both of those boxes. I look at Deion Barnes and say, all right, he's from Penn State. It'll be definitely a step up, Penn State to Michigan. We talked about the last couple of years. That's certainly going to be a step in the right direction, but I think this is a guy that is a perfect candidate for this Michigan program. And again, we've seen Sherrone Moore get extremely aggressive in terms of building the staff around him. Last name I want to throw out there, and I don't know how realistic this is, and we just hired Pernell McPhee, 2 nights ago. And Pernell McPhee, very little coaching experience, actually almost no coaching experience, but you look at the fits. This is a guy that 10-plus year NFL veteran, has played in Wink Martindale scheme. We were massive fans of this hire as a defensive assistant. I wonder if you just slide in Pernell McPhee, whether it's temporary, whether it's permanent, as the defensive line coach. You talk about checking boxes. We don't necessarily know what the coaching development looks like, but we kind of have an idea of what he could potentially do on the recruiting trail. You talk about trying to get young risers as position coaches. This would be a little bit of a risk. You don't normally see guys immediately step into their coaching career and land a position coach spot on a program like Michigan, but you have seen in the past, right? Guys like James Laurinaitis at Ohio State, Mike Vrabel at Ohio State as well. You've seen NFL veterans step in and become really good position coaches right off the bat. Could be like that for Pernell McPhee as well. Wanted to throw that name out there. Amar Stewart, Terence Jameson, guys like Deion Barnes, really good candidates for this Michigan program. But again, at the end of the day, this has to be one of, if not the most attractive defensive line coaching job across the country. I expect Sherrone Moore to get very aggressive in terms of who he's bringing in. Those are the names I have. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. As always, appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all